UK. We've got some of our wonderful judges here today and Diane Laufer to kind of walk through what are the changes to the CIO 100 this year and why we put those changes in place. We'll then talk a little bit about the psychology of awards, why they are so important, especially within the business world. We'll then go into the importance of personal brands and what do things like the CIO 100 do for you. That's going to take us up to around 5 to 2, by which point we're going to organize some breakout rooms for everyone. We will be in smaller groups with some of our judges for this year. And that is your chance to just ask any questions that you have in particular about perhaps your own application or the application process. What are we looking for this year from a judging perspective, etc. You are welcome to ask questions throughout the session. Just pop them in the chat below and I can bring those questions forward as the time goes on. But if you have any questions specific to your application, for example, I'd recommend holding on to them until we do our breakout rooms. So some key changes that have happened for this year. We have split it up into a 2-stage process. A lot of the feedback that we got from last year and in fact from previous years was that it was a very long application. It was perhaps a little daunting and therefore didn't always encourage people to apply. It also perhaps wasn't the most inclusive application form. So what we've done is really ripped up all the pages and started again with the hope that we can get a lot more people coming forward for the awards, that people can start having a bit of a go, really. Stage 1 is much shorter. You just sort of put yourself forward for the award. It's keen that we know who you are, what your position is, what your reporting line is, and also just a short summary about yourself. So just kind of a very holistic overview about who you are, what you're doing in the business, and what key things you are working on. This is very short. It's a maximum of 200 words to put it together. We just want to get a kind of a brief idea of who you are or who it is you are nominating for the award. So that's one big change. If you know any other fellow CIOs, CTOs, heads of IT that perhaps aren't so willing to put themselves forward, but you think they really deserve the recognition, you're able to do that now as well and put that short summary into that question. Stage 1 is just text only, so just writing your answer in the summary there, and that would be sort of live for the next month or so. We then gather all those applications as judges and we'll go through kind of who we think is worthy to be nominated for the CIO 100 and go to the second stage. This is things like, are they in the right position within their company? Have they got the right tenure? So one of the key things is that you need to be in your role for at least 1 year from the date that the applications open. So let's say, for example, you've joined a new company in December, you would have only been in that role for 2 months. Unfortunately, due to that short tenure, you wouldn't be eligible for the CIO 100 this year, but you definitely would be eligible for the CIO 100 next year. You will find out that you are successful for stage 2 of the nominations after Easter, around kind of April, May time. And that is when we go into a little bit more detail around who you are and what you are doing. The good news is for those who have applied for CIO 100 in the past, it's no longer 27 questions. It is now 6 questions, so significantly shorter. And it's covering kind of key aspects that we expect the CIO to be involved in. So this is things around diversity and inclusion, sustainability initiatives, AI initiatives, working in leadership, etc. We've designed the questions to kind of capture all the elements that might be involved within the CIO role. These questions can be done by either written form or you can do it as a short video. You won't be judged on the quality of the video, so don't worry if you just want to record it on your phone or if you want to get like a green screen up, Whatever way you want to film it is absolutely fine, but you are welcome to just film yourself answering the questions. Or finally, the third option is to do an interview with one of our judges. So I'm going to pick on Fergus because he's next to me on the call. But let's say you arrange a 15 to 20-minute meeting with Fergus. He'll run through those questions with you and sort of talk to you about them. That is then recorded and watched by some of the other judges, and then that is the file that's used to review. The goal here is that whatever is your kind of strongest way of presenting yourself, hopefully one of those three is the best way to do it, and you feel more comfortable, therefore, sharing what you have achieved in the last year. You'll then find out if you are successful around the start of August. So a nice little summer break, kind of either victory call, hopefully. And we celebrate the CIO100 Awards on the 18th of September at the Savoy Hotel. So that is, I appreciate, a very quick run through of the changes that have happened. Quite big changes in terms of previous years, and I'm here and available if you want to have any conversations or questions offline. But hopefully the rest of the session will also just help you put your answers together and think about how you're going to structure that application form. What I would like to do now is pass it over to Diane, who's going to talk a little bit around why awards like this are important, what are some of the psychology behind awards and applying, and just give a little bit of insight to that. So Diane, if you're ready, I'm going to pass the mic over to you.
Thank you very much, Romy. Good afternoon, everybody. When Tracy and I first started talking about this subject, we were talking particularly about the fact that not very many women achieve the CIO Top 100 awards. And that's not because they're not as good as the men, it's because there aren't as many who apply. And so out of that, we started talking about why that might be. And I found myself thinking, yes, I know why that is. This happens to me a lot, actually. And it comes down fundamentally to some differences in communication styles between men and women that you can see at play all over the business world. But you can see it particularly when it comes to people putting themselves forward for awards. Now, I can do a whole keynote on this topic, and I only have about 7 minutes today, so I haven't got time to do my usual disclaimer about men and women and the fact that, in evolutionary terms, we have inherited the brains that we needed in our tribal ancestry when there were very well-defined gender roles. And so men learnt to think in one way, women learnt to think in another way that suited their roles in the community. Now, in the modern world, we know gender is much more fluid. I'm not saying everybody fits rigidly into one of these two boxes. However, our brains did evolve this way, and we have inherited this as part of the way that we think and the way that we communicate with other people. So today I'm drawing on the work of Deborah Tannen, who wrote this book called You Just Don't Understand, which I read many years ago and I still go back to from time to time. And one of the things that came out of her research was that men and women communicate for very different purposes. So men communicate mostly to negotiate status. Now, if you think about this, think back to our tribal ancestors. Primary job of the male was to go out hunting, right, as a pack. So in that scenario, you have to know who's in charge. You have to know what your role is. You have to know where you fit in, and you have to be prepared to kind of, do what you're told to do. So knowing where you are in the pecking order is really, really important. Yeah. Now, that sort of, come down through the centuries and millennia, so that we still have a kind of typical masculine way of communicating. And in the business world, this means that we often ask, what do you do? Where do you fit into your organization? We exchange business cards or their electronic equivalent because it helps us understand, where does somebody fit in the pecking order? And if somebody doesn't tell you where they fit in the pecking order, there is sometimes a tendency to disregard, to think, well, they can't be important. I don't know where they fit. I'm always at that risk because I don't belong to any kind of organization. I work mostly with CIOs and CTOs, but I don't hold that kind of position myself. So, so that kind of where do you fit in the pecking order is the most important thing. Socially, it comes out in conversations about things like whose football team's doing better than somebody else's, or which car has the best figures in whatever matters to you, whether it's economy or it's speed or whatever. And there's a group of men sitting together can quite comfortably pass a few hours chatting about those sorts of things. Women listening in will often say they don't really seem to talk about anything very much. Now, contrast that with the female approach to communication, right? So you're a woman back in our primitive time. Your job is, along with all the other women, to look after the children, yeah, and cook and, just make sure that everybody stays together and everybody's happy. So your primary purpose for communication is to build relationships. And in the modern world, what that means is that a lot of women approach their business life and business relationships where they don't really care where you sit in the pecking order, but they want to know who are you and what are you good at? What do you stand for? How can you find some common ground? And this also goes off into female social life, where women, a group of women sitting chatting, will often compare experiences. So, oh, I had this happen to me this way. Oh, yeah, I've had something like that happen to me. What did you do about it? And they build relationships together. They never ask how senior are you, how many people have you got reporting to, how big's your budget, or anything like that. They're not interested. They just want to know who you are. Men listening to that kind of conversation will often think or say, they don't really seem to talk about anything very much. You relating to this? So, what's that got to do with awards? Well, what it means is that it comes much more naturally to a man to say, I think I've done enough to get an award. I'm going to put myself forward for this because that then gives me status. That then makes it easy for people to know where I fit in the hierarchy of things. A lot of women don't really see the necessity for it. They don't really see that it's got any value for them. Surely what counts is, what kind of a person you are and if you're doing a good job. And anyway, if I'm doing a good, surely somebody will give me an award without me having to step forward and ask for it. And I'm looking around the screen and I see that we still don't have very many women who've turned up for this webinar. So I do hope the recording might make its way out to some of the women who haven't been able to join us today. So there's a couple of things that I think are really important before I close. We talk a lot about inclusivity. And I think inclusivity means communicating with people in a way that they can relate to. So I'm talking to women here, really. Men find it easier to deal with you if they know where you sit in the pecking order. So putting yourself forward for an award by saying, hey, I've done some good stuff here. I'm good at what I do. You're helping people understand who you are and helping them to approach you to create a working relationship. So that's really important. And for the men, well, I'd love you to encourage some of the women that you know to apply for these awards and, maybe even show them the recording of this so that they get the idea of why it's important. But also, gentlemen, just be aware that your female colleagues and the women in your network, they'd like to know a little bit about you rather than just your job title and what you've achieved in life. Yeah. So it may come naturally to men to put themselves forward for awards, and women find that they don't really care. But if you did care, if you forced yourself to care a little bit, what you would find is that an award communicates your status and then opens up more opportunities for professional relationships. Happy to take any questions if we've got time.
That's so interesting, Diane. Thank you. Any questions on that from anyone?
Dear, I've stunned everybody into silence.
Actually, I do.
Go for it.
Thank you for the opportunity, first of all, and thanks for organizing this. It's really valuable, and I've been taking notes as we were going along. I have a couple of questions that I believe are still related to the themes of diversity and inclusivity, which was just discussed, although from a slightly different angle. First is about the tenure in a role. As you surely know, we have, me included, a few CTO, CIOs who are interims, and what you said seems to be more tailored for more established and permanent CIOs. And I was wondering if that is intentional or what you're going to do to be to consider equally the value that people who are interims still provide, or sometimes even exceed, with regards to the permanently placed peers. And the other question I have is about organization size and type. So I've noticed in the past that many of the nominees and recipients tend to come from large corporations. But as you know, there are equally accomplished CIOs in much smaller organizations, and very often they face the same challenges, and sometimes with fewer resources. So is there an intention to ensure there is a balance between a broader spectrum of organizations?
Both really good questions. I'm going to start and then I'm going to bring Madhu, Fergus, and Tracy in with our judges with their thoughts. And I'm actually going to answer the wrong way round. So the second question that you had around organization size is really important. And if I'm honest, when the judges get on a call together, it gets spoken about a lot because we always look at the size, the budget, but the most important thing that gets measured is impact. So impact of the person, impact of the team, impact of the projects and the opportunity, because it's very important for us to not measure something that's done with a 20 million pound budget versus something that's done with a 200,000 pound budget. So the key thing that I will say the judges are always looking for is the impact of that decision as opposed to how glitzy and how beautiful and how wonderful that project may be. So rest assured, it's not favoring company size or budgets or look how many exciting things they can do. I think there's a really good recognition already that that's not what they're looking at. And actually, during the times of the pandemic, we did see a huge shift in the CIO 100 from getting a lot of NHS or kind of trust CIOs being put forward for it because the impact that was being made at that time was really worthy of that recognition. So I say that's what's being measured, not so much what has been spent and how has it been spent, but what is the impact of that decision meant for that organization and team. The second piece around the interim, because we do see more and more of those applications come through. If you asked me that question 5 years ago, we wouldn't really have seen them, but now we do. And it is a little bit, I think, of like a case by case basis with those applications. The reason that we say a year is because again, it goes back to that impact. So what impact has an individual made on the business? And that's what we're looking at. But I'll pause there because I know that the judges can speak to this slightly better than I can. I don't know if anyone here from the group that we have online would like to jump on.
I'll come in.
Yes,
Thanks.
please do.
Hi. So thank you for the question. Both really fantastic questions. So in terms of your first question, I myself, I'm a Freeman Clark CIO, principal CIO. So I am fractional by definition. The interesting point about fractional CIOs is not their ability or the technical outcomes they create. The 1 year tenure allows you to really have an impact in the people space, in the business space. So your impact is not just on the technical aspect, but it's also wider, it's bigger. The change is more enduring, the change is a true C-suite change. So there it's hence the year's tenure, and we have a lot of applications come in. I've been doing this since 2022, and I can see the difference between where a CIO has had time to bed themselves in, become part of the team, actually become a valued voice, a really valued voice at the board level, affecting the CIO's thinking, affecting the board's thinking, the chair's thinking. That is something that, in my experience and in my review of the hundreds of applications we've had, is with time it gets a lot better. It's like a finely matured wine. It takes a little bit of time. So that's my answer to your first question. Your second question about Your second question was also fantastic, and Romy answered it very well. She talked about impact. It's about impact. It's your journey. It's your outcome. What was your journey? What is your outcome? And I think that's what we are looking at. I want to hear the story. I want to see the story. I want to feel your journey and how you have touched areas that are not directly technology or IT or data, where it goes beyond that into the people space, into the future space. Where is the business going? Where you've been able to lead that. So those are my two answers. Romy, if anyone else wants to join.
Thanks. Thanks, Romy. I would like to come in if you don't mind. Um, Thanks, Diane, and thanks, Ayush, for sharing your thoughts. And Diane, particularly your view and thoughts on the differences between the women and men and how our brains have been evolved, and that is really interesting and helped us to think and reflect. And having said that, we are all men are brought by women, as you know. Okay, the men cannot survive in this world without women. They are surrounded by sisters, they are surrounded by mothers and daughters. So it is important, as you rightly said, to encourage the women leaders in the organization to step up and to encourage them to nominate their applications. I'm sure everyone in this call will also do that. So I okay, and thanks Romy and thanks Aisha for explaining about the impact, and it is all about the impact and to understand the journey. It is not about the positions. That is what I am understanding. The reason I'm saying is, okay, currently I'm working in Royal Papworth Hospital as a deputy CIO, and I have been there for the last 15 months now, and I hope I can submit my application. Okay, even then I'm playing the deputy CIO role. I'm stepping into the CIO role, and I'm stepping into his position as a board member, attending board meetings and also taking a lot of strategic decisions and making impact on the organization. And I hope um, that will be considered. That is the bit which I want to clarify. And the next question is about application. I will ask that after I get response to my question.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So, Raj, your question sounds very specific to the role that you have, and I actually recommend we hold on to that until we go into the breakout rooms, and then we can go through that kind of with the judges in that group at that point, if that's okay.
That's
Um, we've got about 5 minutes, and I do just want to bring Tracy in at this point and talk through a little bit around the personal brand piece, why it is so important now within the corporate setting to talk about that, and how kind of different awards like the CIO100 and others out there help facilitate that. So we're just going to have a short fireside now with Diane and Tracy on this topic, because I think it's hugely relevant when looking at awards to apply for, whether it be the CIO100 or others. So Tracy, I'm going to go to you first. What does personal brands actually mean now within the business, and why is it so relevant and important?
I think if you meet any CIO that tells you that their job is easy, I don't think they're a proper CIO. Everybody will sit at different positions. You might have some reporting to the CEOs, to the CFO. That business might have different levels of maturity. And it's very, very hard to often get that recognition to move the IT function right the way through from perhaps something transactional at the bottom all the way up to a visionary CIO at the top. And how you're viewed within the business will help you to deliver. It will help you to deliver well. And those awards, that level of peer recognition is great so that the people out there who are working in your industry know what you're doing. They've looked at what you're doing, how you're delivering, all of those things. And it's a benchmark. The people that you're working with know that you're great at what you're doing. They're going to open up and they're going to listen to you because what you're doing is being looked at externally. It's been reviewed. And it's really going to help you to have that level of recognition for the skills and what you're actually doing. Because often IT can go under the wire. It can be you're just doing stuff to us, or you're just doing things in the background. It lights it up so that people can actually see that your capabilities and the perception of IT really should be a lot better in some cases. So I think it's really important. All of those awards, if you really wanted, you could go out there and you could actually have somebody apply for awards for you. I know CIOs that have done it because it helps you to get to that next stage. It helps you to move forward, to get a better job, to get, you know, some of those speaker positions that everybody loves where people want to debate with you and talk to you, and it helps to build your learning as well.
Like brings everything to life, doesn't it? A little bit of what you're doing, what you're achieving. Diane, I'll bring you here. What are your thoughts around what the personal brand means within the business?
I totally agree with what Tracy said. I would also underline it can improve your standing within your company. You know, as Tracy said, sometimes IT goes under the radar. And one of the things that we've seen change in the sector over the last 10 years maybe is that whereas a lot of people were treated as a kind of backroom function, now technology is front and center with everything that every company does. You know, you really cannot run a business without your tech, and therefore, you know, you need to know that you've got the right person running it for you. And so when, you know, when as an internal person you're able to say, I've got an award from my peers, that gives your CEO much more confidence in you. There's also
Okay.
something
Oh,
kind of out there in the marketplace about have you heard of the Baker paradox? With apologies, I know we have a Mr. Baker on the call. The Baker paradox is that if somebody tells you that they are a baker, you're more likely to remember that than if they tell you that their name is Baker. Because if somebody says, "Oh, I'm a baker," then your head is filled with images of loaves and cakes and, you know, all this kind of thing. But when somebody tells you their name, it doesn't really stimulate an image for you, so you're less likely to remember it. So when you meet somebody and, you know, professionally they tell you something that they've done or, you know, an award that they've got, it tends to then make them more memorable than just knowing their name.
like you recognize people by the fact about them as opposed to just the name is or sounds like.
Yeah. And when we all know lots of people struggle to remember names.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
But
so
we
interesting.
often remember, you know, something about somebody.
I'm aware of time, so I'm going to merge the second and last question into one. I'm sure there's people on the call who are thinking personal brands, like I do not have one. I don't really think I have one. So my questions to you both is in two parts. One is how do awards like the CIO100 facilitate that personal brand? And I know Tracy, you alluded to it a little bit just now. But then secondly, what is the starting point for people who want to bring their personal brand more forward within the business or within the organizations that they're in? Diane, I'll go to you first and then Tracy after.
Okay. I think actually applying for an award is a really good place to start because the process of applying for the award will get you thinking about what's important to you, what you've achieved, what you're good at. And that is the basis really of your personal brand, is understanding what you stand for. So I would say if you've never done it before, then it really is worthwhile putting yourself forward for an award just because of that process of personal reflection that it demands of you.
Tracy, what are your thoughts?
I think as well, for me, it's about starting with the end in mind. What do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? Do you want to become more well known? Do you want to position yourself as an expert in a particular field? For many years, I was what was called a silent leader. So I didn't do any of this because I was so involved in delivering. And when it comes time then to move on, to get another job, to do all of the things that you want to do, we've all seen one job goes out on LinkedIn, there's 500 people apply. How do they know that you're worth looking at? How do they even want to pick your CV up? Within the business, you might want to move on and go further up on the board. You might want to become a COO. All of these things, that level of credibility and recognition then rubber stamps your capability into people's minds. And I think that's what's really important. It's understanding what that end is and then using this to work towards it to build your personal brand, your personal recognition, whether you can bring value on certain areas and working with that and following through the plan. So this should all be part of what you're aiming for.
I love your phrase there of like the rubber stamp. I think that's awesome. I'm aware of time. We are going to have chances for questions afterwards, but I really want to give you all the opportunity to have a one-to-one or a one-to-few with our judges to go through any questions in particular. The lovely Hannah, who's been supporting in the background, is now going to put you all into your breakout rooms for the next 25 minutes or so. And that's for you all to be able to discuss in smaller groups the application process, any questions that you may have, and then we will reconvene at around 25 past for a little summary and next steps. But Hannah, when you're ready, if you can pop us all into our breakout rooms, that'd be awesome.